Only 2 minutes left, God says. Trust my protection. I am watching over your home. What if the next 2 minutes decided whether you walked into tomorrow carrying fear or carrying peace? Right now, somewhere in your chest, there's a weight you haven't told anyone about. Maybe it's the mortgage you're not sure you'll make this month. Maybe it's the silence in a house that used to feel full. Maybe it's a door you keep checking twice, a phone call you're dreading, a diagnosis you're waiting on. And here's the question I need you to sit with before you scroll away. What if the very thing you're afraid will fall apart is the exact thing God has already wrapped his hand around? Stay with me for the next few minutes. Not because I'm going to tell you something new, but because you're about to be reminded of something you forgot you already knew. The pain you're carrying right now. You've been holding your breath for longer than you realize. Maybe it started small. A bill you set aside for now, a conversation you avoided, a room in your house that feels colder than it used to, not because of the temperature, but because of what's missing in it. You lie down at night and your mind starts walking through the house. The locks, the bills, the people who used to be there and aren't anymore, the people who are there and you're terrified of losing. Here's the honest question. When was the last time you felt truly safe? Not performing safety, not pretending for everyone else, but actually safe in your bones. If you can't remember, you're not broken. You're human. And you're about to hear something that's going to shift the ground under that fear. The house was never just wooden walls. Think about your home for a second. Not the structure, but what it holds. First steps. Late-night arguments that turned into forgiveness. A kitchen table where prayers were whispered over cold coffee. Do you know why the enemy of your peace targets your home specifically? Because a home isn't just where you sleep. It's where your identity gets rebuilt every single day. It's the one place meant to be untouchable. And that's exactly why Scripture doesn't say, God watches your career, or your bank account, or your reputation first. It says He watches over your dwelling place. Psalm 121 doesn't whisper it. It declares it. He who watches over you will not slumber, not might, not sometimes, will not. Fear has a favorite time of day. Notice something. Your fear doesn't usually show up at noon, when the sun is out and the world is loud. It shows up at 2 a.m., when the house is quiet and your mind has nothing else to compete with. Why do you think the darkest hour is when the loudest lies get told? Because darkness isn't just the absence of light, it's the absence of distraction. And in that silence, the enemy doesn't need a big lie. He just needs you to forget one truth, that the God who never sleeps is more awake in your 2 a.m. than you are. While you're staring at the ceiling counting your losses, He's already counting the ways He's going to bring you through. Protection doesn't always look like absence of trouble. Here's something that might sting a little. Being watched over by God was never a promise that nothing bad would ever knock on your door. Have you ever wondered why some of the godliest people you know have still walked through fire? Because protection isn't the absence of the storm. It's the presence of someone standing in it with you. Daniel wasn't protected by being kept out of the lion's den. He was protected inside it. The 3 men in the furnace weren't spared the flames. They were found walking in them, untouched, with a 4th figure beside them. Your home may still face a hard season, but hard doesn't mean unguarded. Enemy knows your address better than you think. This one is uncomfortable, but it's true. Whatever is trying to destroy your peace right now, the anxiety, the financial pressure, the family tension, it isn't random. It's targeted. If you knew for certain that your home was under a spiritual assignment of protection, would you still be losing sleep over it? The enemy doesn't waste time attacking empty houses. He attacks homes where something is being built. Faith, legacy, healing, a family being restored. If your home feels like it's under pressure, that pressure is often proof that something sacred is happening inside it. You were never meant to guard it alone somewhere along the way. You convinced yourself that if you just work harder, worry more, control every variable, the house will hold. But ask yourself honestly, how much of your exhaustion right now is from carrying something you were never asked to carry alone? Psalm 127 says it plainly, "Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches the city, the watchman stays awake in vain." That word vain isn't gentle. It means empty, wasted effort. You can stop white-knuckling the walls of your life tonight. The doorposts remember something you forgot. There's an old story about door frames marked with blood, and death passing over the houses that bore the mark. It wasn't about the house being special. It was about what was placed on it. What have you placed over the doorposts of your life? Worry doesn't cover a house. Control doesn't cover a house. But surrender does. When you stop trying to be the one holding the roof up, and instead let your trust become the mark over your door, something shifts, not around you, but in you. Your home is a reflection of your own rooms. Here's a truth most people never say out loud. The chaos in your house often mirrors the chaos in your heart. When you walk through your front door at the end of the day, what are you really walking into? A house, or the unprocessed weight of everything you haven't let go of. Healing your home sometimes starts with healing the rooms inside you that no one else can see. The resentment tucked in a corner, the grief still sitting in a chair no one uses. God isn't just watching the structure. He's tending to what's inside you too. 2 minutes can change what 2 years. You've probably tried to fix this feeling before. A new routine, a new distraction, a new promise to yourself that things will calm down soon. And maybe it worked for a week. What if the shift you've been chasing for years isn't found in doing more, but in finally being still enough to hear what's already been spoken over you? 2 minutes of surrender can undo 2 years of striving. Not because the 2 minutes are magic, but because that's often the first time you actually stopped long enough to listen. The watchman doesn't clock out. Every human guard eventually gets tired. Every security system has a blind spot. Every lock can be picked. But what happens when the one watching your home never needs rest, never looks away, and never misses a single moment? That's the difference between man-made safety and covered peace. One is limited by hours and technology. The other is limited by nothing. This is the moment you stop bracing. You've been bracing for impact for so long. You forgot what it feels like to just exhale. So here's the last question before we close. If God is already watching over your home tonight, what exactly are you still guarding alone? Let it go. Not because the problem disappeared, but because you were never meant to carry it by yourself in the first place. If something in you just softened while reading this, if some tight, guarded place in your chest just loosened its grip a little, that wasn't an accident. You don't have to fix everything tonight. You don't have to have all the answers about the bills, the silence, the fear. You just have to let this truth sit where the worry used to live. Your home, your family, your life. It's being watched over right now by someone who never sleeps. If you want more of this, more truth that reaches the tired, guarded places in you and actually starts changing how you carry your days, subscribe. This channel exists for exactly this moment, the one you're in right now. You made it through these 2 minutes. Let them be the 2 minutes that changed the rest of your nights. What if the reason you haven't felt peace in your own house has nothing to do with the walls around you, and everything to do with a war you didn't know was happening? You've prayed over that room. You've cleaned it, rearranged it, tried to make it feel different. But the heaviness keeps coming back. Tonight, before you turn off the light again and lie there staring at the ceiling, I want you to ask yourself one thing. What if the very ground you're standing on right now has already been claimed on your behalf, and you're the only one who hasn't heard the news yet? Give me the next few minutes. Something you've been carrying since childhood is about to be named. Pain you're carrying right now. There's a specific kind of tired that has nothing to do with sleep. It's the tired of walking into your own kitchen and feeling like a stranger in it, of hearing a door creak at night and your whole body going rigid before your mind even catches up, of raising kids, or trying to build a marriage, or just trying to get through a Tuesday inside 4 walls that are supposed to feel like sanctuary, but instead feel like a place you're just surviving. When did your home stop feeling like rest and start feeling like one more thing you have to manage? You didn't choose this exhaustion, but you can choose what happens next. The first home was never meant to be guarded by mango back to the very beginning. A garden, not a house, but still a dwelling place. And even there, a boundary was set. A presence walked through it in the cool of the day. Have you ever noticed that from the very first pages of Scripture, God has always been the one walking the perimeter of where his people live? He didn't hand Adam a weapon and say, "Defend this place." He simply stayed present in it. The pattern was set before sin ever entered the picture. Your dwelling was never designed to be defended by human strength alone. It was designed to be inhabited by presence. The noise you hear at night is often just noise. You know the sound, the house settling, the pipes, the wind against the window, and your heart rate spikes before your brain reminds you it's nothing. Why does your body react to sound faster than your faith does? Because fear has had more practice than trust. For years, maybe decades, you trained yourself to brace first and believe second. Tonight, that pattern gets to be interrupted. Not because the sounds will stop. Houses always make noise. But because you're going to start recognizing which alarms are real and which ones are just old wiring in your nervous system that never got the memo that you're covered. Some attacks don't comb through the front door. Not every threat to your home looks like danger. Sometimes it looks like exhaustion that never lifts. Sometimes it looks like everyone in the house being irritable for no clear reason. Sometimes it looks like 2 people who love each other suddenly unable to finish a sentence without it turning into a fight. What if the tension in your home isn't a communication problem? What if it's a spiritual one wearing a communication problem as a disguise? Not everything needs a counselor before it needs a covering. Sometimes the first repair isn't a conversation, it's a surrender. Your address is written down somewhere you can't see. There's a strange comfort in knowing that before you ever signed a lease or a mortgage, before you ever picked the paint color or hung a single picture frame, the ground your home sits on was already known. Do you believe your home was an accident, or do you believe it was assigned? Nothing about where you live is random to the one who numbers your days. The walls you're sitting inside right now were not a surprise to him, which means the protection over them isn't an afterthought either. Grief lives in house too. Maybe your house isn't loud with conflict. Maybe it's just quiet in a way that hurts. An empty chair, a room you don't go into anymore. A version of your family that used to gather here and doesn't anymore. Have you let yourself grieve what your home used to hold? Or have you just been walking past it, pretending the ache isn't there? God doesn't just watch over the structure. He sits with you in the rooms that hurt the most. He was present in Bethany, at a grave, weeping with people he was about to raise from the dead. He doesn't rush your grief to get to the miracle. He grieves with you first. The enemy wants you distracted, not just destroyed. Sometimes the goal isn't to burn the house down. Sometimes the goal is just to keep you so busy, so drained, so distracted by small fires, that you never notice the peace that was available to you the whole time. What has been stealing your attention lately that has absolutely nothing to do with what actually matters in your home? The scroll, the comparison, the endless list of things to fix. None of it is inherently evil, but all of it can become a smokescreen that keeps you from ever sitting still long enough to feel what's actually true, that you are held. The people under your roof are part of the covering to you, are not the only one being watched over. Every person who walks through your door, your spouse, your kids, the friend who crashes on your couch during a hard season, they're standing under the same covering you are. Have you been carrying the weight of protecting everyone in your home by yourself, forgetting that they're covered too, not just by you, but by the same hand that's over you? You are not the sole guardian of everyone you love. You are a steward. There's a difference. A steward rests. A sole guardian never does. Truth doesn't need your perfection. To work may be part of why you don't feel protected, is because you don't feel like you deserve to be. Maybe there's guilt about a decision, a season you're not proud of, a version of yourself you're still trying to outrun. Do you think God's watchfulness over your home is a reward for your performance? Or is it a gift you were never required to earn? Nothing about this promise was ever tied to how well you kept it together. The watching started before you had anything figured out, and it doesn't stop the moment you fall short again. Some nights the protection looks like stillness. Not rescued, you might be waiting for something dramatic. A sign, a breakthrough, a moment where everything visibly changes. And when it doesn't come, you assume nothing is happening. What if the protection you're praying for isn't going to look like a rescue? What if it's just going to look like an ordinary, unremarkable, quiet night where nothing bad happens, and you never even realize what you were spared from? Most of the protection over your life has been invisible. The car accident that didn't happen. The argument that could have ended a marriage but didn't escalate. You've been kept more times than you'll ever know, and that's not a small thing. That's the whole point. 2 minutes from now, you get to choose what you carry back into that house. You're almost at the end of this, and in a moment you're going to close this and walk back into the same rooms, past the same doors, under the same roof. So here's the question that matters most. Are you going to walk back in there, carrying the same fear you walked in with? Or are you going to walk back in there, believing you were never standing there alone? The house hasn't changed in the last few minutes, but you might have. You didn't come across this by accident tonight. Something in you has been asking for permission to stop fighting so hard to hold everything together. Consider this, that permission. Not because the pressure disappears the second you close your eyes tonight, but because the weight was never supposed to sit on your shoulders alone in the first place. Your home is being watched. The people in it are being watched. The nights that feel too quiet and the days that feel too loud. None of it is happening outside of his attention. If this reached something in you tonight, if you want more of these moments that meet you exactly where you are and remind you what's actually true, subscribe. This is a place built for exactly the kind of night you're having right now. 2 minutes ago, you were carrying it alone. You don't have to walk back into that house the same way. Only 2 minutes left. God says, I am watching over your home. What if the reason your prayers over your home feel unanswered is because you've been asking for a fence, when what you already have is a fortress? You keep asking him to protect what's yours, but somewhere inside, a quieter question has been sitting for a long time. One you've never said out loud, not even to yourself. What if you don't actually believe your home is worth protecting? Sit with that for a second before you look away. Give me 2 minutes. Something old is about to loosen its grip. The pain you're carrying right now, you've gotten good at holding it together in front of people. But behind that closed bedroom door, in the 10 minutes before anyone else wakes up, you know the truth. You've been running your home like a business that's one bad month from closing. Checking accounts you're afraid to look at. Watching relationships you're afraid to name out loud as struggling. Smiling through dinner while your mind runs numbers and worst-case scenarios in the background. How long have you been performing peace instead of actually having it? That performance ends tonight, if you let it. You were taught to earn safety, not rerig it somewhere back in your story. Maybe a childhood home that wasn't stable. Maybe a season where things fell apart without warning. You learned a lesson nobody said out loud. Safety is something you build, brick by brick, through control. What would it mean for you if safety was never something you had to build in the first place? That belief has been running your life longer than you realize. It's why you can't relax, even when things are going well. Some part of you is always waiting for the other shoe. But the covering over your home was never something you had to construct. It was already laid before you moved in. The storm doesn't mean you were abandoned. There's a story about a boat, a group of exhausted men, and a storm strong enough to make grown fishermen believe they were about to drown. And in the middle of it, the one they needed most was asleep in the back of the boat. Have you ever felt like God was sleeping through your storm? Here's what's easy to miss in that story. He wasn't unaware. He was unafraid. His rest in the middle of your storm isn't neglect. It's evidence that the outcome was never actually in question. Your home remembers every prayer you've whispered in. Think about the prayers that have been said inside your walls. The ones over a sick child in the middle of the night. The ones whispered over a marriage that felt like it was slipping. The ones you didn't even have words for, just tears and a name repeated over and over. Do you think those prayers just evaporated? Or do you think they're still doing something you can't see? Nothing prayed in desperation inside your home was wasted. Every one of those moments became a kind of altar, even if you never called it that. And altars don't stop working just because the crisis passed. The thing you're most afraid of losing is often what's most guarded. Notice this. The fear that keeps you up isn't usually about something small. It's about the people, the relationships, the pieces of your life that matter most. Isn't it strange that the things you love the deepest are the exact things you trust the least to be kept safe? The intensity of your fear is actually a signal of the value of what you're protecting. And here's the reversal worth sitting with. The same value that makes you terrified of losing it is the same value that makes it worth God's attention. He is not indifferent to the things that matter to you. Silence from God is not the same as absence of God. Maybe you've prayed about this house, this family, this season, and heard nothing back. No clear sign, no dramatic answer. Just silence that started to feel like rejection. What if the silence isn't him withdrawing, but him working in a register you haven't learned to hear yet? A seed doesn't make noise while it's growing underground. The most important things, roots, foundations, healing, happen in the dark, without applause, long before anything visible breaks the surface. Your silence might not be abandonment. It might be a root system forming. You can't protect what you refuse. To rest in there's an exhausting irony in trying so hard to protect your peace that you end up destroying it in the process. Checking the locks 5 times, replaying the argument for the 10th time, staying up managing a fear that only grows the more attention you give it. What if the very act of trying to control your safety is the thing keeping you from experiencing it? Rest isn't the reward you get after everything is finally secure. Rest is often the very thing that makes security possible, because a mind that never stops defending never has room to notice it's already being defended. The enemy doesn't fear your struggle. He fears your surrender. You can fight and strive and white-knuckle your way through a hard season, and honestly, very little in the spiritual realm is threatened by that. Striving looks like effort, but it often just keeps you exhausted and distracted. What is it about surrender specifically that seems to change everything when effort alone couldn't? Surrender isn't weakness. It's the one move that actually shifts the ground, because it's the moment you stop trying to be your own protector and let the real one step in. That's the move the enemy actually fears, not your hustle, your rest. Your home is a witness, not just a shelter. Every home tells a story to the people who walk through it. Yours has told a story of anxiety for a while now, maybe. Tension, holding your breath. What if your home was always meant to be a witness to how God carries a family through hard things, not just a shelter that keeps hard things out? The goal was never a house untouched by struggle. The goal was a house that becomes proof to your kids, your friends, yourself, of what it looks like to be held in the middle of struggle rather than removed from it. 2 words can carry more weight than 2 hours of worry. You've spent hours, maybe years, turning problems over in your mind, trying to think your way into peace. It's never worked, not really. What if the 2 words, I trust, carried more actual power over your circumstances than every hour you've spent worrying combined? Worry has never once fixed a single thing you were afraid of. Trust doesn't always fix it either, not immediately. But trust does something worry never can. It moves the weight off your chest and puts it back where it belongs. You get to decide what this night means. You're near the end of this again. In a few moments you'll set this down and go back to your evening. The dishes, the messages waiting, the quiet house around you. So here's the last question. Is tonight going to be another night you managed your fear, or the night you finally let something bigger than your fear take over? Nothing outside you has to change in the next 5 minutes for something inside you to change completely. You've spent a long time trying to earn a peace that was actually already yours to receive. Tonight doesn't require you to fix your home, fix your family, or fix yourself before you're allowed to rest. It just requires you to stop carrying what was never yours to carry alone. The walls around you, the people inside them, the quiet hours ahead. All of it is being watched right now by someone who has never once looked away. If tonight reached you, if you want more truth that finds you in the tired, guarded places and actually shifts something real, subscribe. This channel exists for exactly the night you're having. You walked in here carrying something heavy. You get to walk out carrying a little less. What if the anxious feeling you get every time you leave your house, that quiet worry about whether everything will still be okay when you return, isn't something you have to carry alone anymore. Starting right now. What if your home, right this second, whether you're standing in it or miles away from it, is being watched over by something far more attentive than any alarm system or security camera could ever be? You have 2 minutes. I want you to actually give them completely, because what's being said to you right now was meant to reach exactly this moment. Exactly this worry you've been carrying about the place where your family sleeps at night. You've probably felt it before, that specific anxiety that shows up late at night, checking the locks one more time even though you already checked them, lying awake listening for sounds that probably aren't actually there, running through worst-case scenarios about your home, your family, your safety, until exhaustion finally overtakes the worry. That specific kind of vigilance is exhausting in a way that's hard to explain to people who haven't carried it themselves. Have you been carrying a quiet, exhausting anxiety about the safety of your home and the people inside it, checking and rechecking things that logically should already feel secure? Why this anxiety often carries weight from something deeper than just your home. Here's something worth understanding honestly. Sometimes this specific worry about your home's safety isn't really about locks, alarms, or physical security at all. It's carrying something deeper, a general sense that you can't fully control what happens to the people and things you love most, a fear that's found its way into worrying about your physical space, because that space is at least something you can lock and check. Unlike the deeper uncertainties of life, you can't control nearly as directly. Could your anxiety about your home's safety actually be carrying a deeper fear about control, one that simply attached itself to something more tangible you can lock and check? Why, you've been carrying this watch alone for too long. Here's something worth sitting with honestly. You've probably positioned yourself as the sole guardian of your home's safety, the only one truly paying attention, the only one who would notice if something went wrong. That role, taken on entirely alone, is exhausting to sustain indefinitely. Tonight's message is specifically about releasing part of that weight, understanding that you were never actually meant to be the only watchful presence over your home in the first place. Have you positioned yourself as the sole protector of your home's safety, carrying that entire weight without allowing yourself to trust any support beyond your own vigilance? Why this protection doesn't will it your constant awareness to actually work? Here's something worth understanding clearly. This watching over your home doesn't require your constant, exhausting vigilance in order to actually function. It's present whether you're anxiously checking every lock repeatedly, or whether you've finally allowed yourself to relax completely. Your worry was never actually the mechanism holding your home together safely. That was never how this specific kind of protection has ever worked, even though your exhausted mind might have convinced you otherwise. Have you unconsciously believed that your own constant worry was somehow necessary to keep your home safe, rather than trusting protection that doesn't depend on your exhausted vigilance? If this is landing somewhere real in you, that's exactly why this series exists. Subscribe now, because part 2 goes even deeper into exactly what this protection actually looks like. Why this protection extends beyond just physical safety. Here's something worth considering with real depth. Watching over your home isn't limited purely to protection from physical intrusion or damage. It extends toward the emotional and relational atmosphere within your walls too. Protecting the peace between family members, guarding against the kind of tension and conflict that can quietly erode a home from the inside, even when the locks and alarms remain perfectly secure. Your home's true safety includes far more than just its physical boundaries. Have you considered that this protection might be watching over the emotional peace within your home, not just its physical security from outside threats? Why this promise doesn't mean nothing difficult will ever happen. Here's something worth clarifying honestly, because false expectations can quietly undermine genuine trust. Being told your home is being watched over doesn't mean you're being promised a life completely free of hardship, financial struggle, or difficult seasons within your household. It means that through whatever your home actually experiences, difficult or otherwise, there's a genuine, attentive presence accompanying that experience, rather than your family facing it in complete isolation. Can you hold this promise as genuine accompaniment through whatever difficulty comes, rather than expecting it to guarantee a life completely free of hardship? Why your home's atmosphere reflects something worth protecting intentionally. Here's something worth considering practically. If this protection genuinely extends to your home's atmosphere, that invites you to participate actively in protecting that same atmosphere yourself. Choosing patience over harsh words during stressful evenings. Choosing genuine presence with your family over distracted, exhausted disconnection. Choosing to make your home a place where people actually want to return to, rather than simply a physical structure that happens to keep out the weather. What specific choice could you make today to actively protect the emotional atmosphere within your own home, rather than only focusing on its physical security? If this is landing somewhere real, that's exactly why this series exists. Subscribe now, because part 2 continues exploring exactly how to partner with this protection practically. Why releasing some of your anxious vigilance might actually make your home safer. Here's something worth considering with genuine openness. Constant anxious vigilance, sustained indefinitely, actually depletes the very energy and presence you need to be genuinely attentive to your family in meaningful ways. Releasing some of that exhausting worry, trusting this deeper protection, alongside your own reasonable, practical precautions, might actually free up the emotional and mental space needed to be more genuinely present and engaged with the people inside your home, rather than perpetually distracted by anxiety about threats that may never materialize. Could releasing some of your anxious vigilance actually free up the presence and energy you need to genuinely engage with your family, rather than making your home less safe? The final truth for these 2 minutes: your home, right now, whether you're standing inside it or far away from it, is being watched over by an attentive presence that doesn't depend on your exhausted vigilance to actually function. That protection extends beyond physical safety into the emotional atmosphere within your walls, inviting your active participation rather than requiring your anxious, isolated watchfulness. You were never meant to carry this weight completely alone. If you released even a portion of the anxious vigilance you've been carrying about your home's safety, trusting this genuine protection instead, how much lighter would tonight actually feel? You've spent so much energy carrying the exhausting weight of being your home's sole protector, checking, rechecking, worrying long after logic would suggest everything was already secure. Tonight, you're being invited to release part of that weight, trusting a genuine, attentive presence that's been watching over your home all along. This only goes deeper into exactly what this protection looks like in practice and how to partner with it rather than carrying everything alone. If this message reached something real in you tonight, don't let it end here. Subscribe now, because part 2 continues exactly where this left off. Your home is being watched over. Rest, even just a little, tonight.